Ma'am, should we? Greetings of the day, everyone. I am privileged to welcome you all in the third edition of Orange City Literature Festival, organized by SDR Knowledge Foundation in association with GH Raisoni University, powered by Raisoni Group of Institutions. I am Kanak Mahalle, a poet, podcaster, and author of the novel Liar. Delighted to be your anchor for today's session, Cooking Far From Home by Ms Kaumudi Marathe in conversation with Ms Anuja Deshpande. Kaumudi ma'am is a journalist turned chef. When she became wary of Indian food being referred to as curry in the USA, her adopted home, she started a company called Uncurry to set the record straight about what Indian food really is. She teaches real Indian home cooking in California, where she lives and caters food from all over India that actually Indians eat. She also hosted the first ever Indian food pop ups in the USA. She is currently working in America's Test Kitchen in Boston as senior editor on the cookbooks team and is often asked to help her colleagues when they are testing recipes. She is the author of the essential Marathi cookbook New Delhi, Penguin India 2009, and of a food memoir, Shared Tables, Family Stories from Pune to LA, Mumbai Speaking Tiger 2017. She enjoys writing children's fiction and is now working on a novel for adults. It's an honor to have you with us, ma'am, and this gets even more delightful when we have Ms. Anuja Deshpande, who will be in conversation with her as the moderator. Anuja ma'am, with her education in power engineering, MBA, MS in industrial engineering from University of Houston, USA, is a personality of diverse interest and admiration. Being passionate about community service, she has been active in the social sector for the last 5 years. She has extensive experience in education projects and disaster management and presently working with funds development team at the Seva International non-profit organization. I once again welcome you, Kaumudi Marathe ma'am, and I welcome you, Anuja Deshpande ma'am. Now, my dear audience, you are about to experience a conversation between two very dynamic individuals. So, without skipping a moment, I humbly invite Ms. Anuja Deshpande ma'am to lead us ahead.
Thank you, Kanak.
Thank you, Kanak. Thank you, and wonderful credentials. You are also an author. I'm very glad to know that. So, Kaumudi ma'am, I would like to start this conversation by saying this is a great opportunity and honor for me to talk to you about your cookbooks and your passion. And we all are, you are inspiring us to follow our passion.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
So let's start with a very basic idea. What was your how did you discover your passion for food? What was your first thought when it came to you?
My passion for food started, I think, when I was a child because I liked to eat what my mother and my grandmothers cooked. But I had no desire to go into the field of food as a chef or anything else. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a journalist. And so I went to journalism school in Bombay. And in 1996, my then husband and I moved to Austin, Texas, because he was going to do a master's in architecture there. And I couldn't work. I could write as a journalist, but I couldn't really work. So I studied. I used the library. I think I used the library more than he did, and studied food history. So the history of food from all over the world, whether it was Georgian food or Persian food or Indian food. I spent 2 years studying that. And at the time, in 1996, is when the Food Network was really growing as a TV station. It wasn't what it is today. It was evolving. But I learned a lot watching the Food Network and cooking for my friends. And our friends who weren't Indian would say, when they came to our house to eat, they said, this food is not like anything we've eaten in Indian restaurants. And I said, well, it's Marathi food. It's the food I know how to cook. And it was very new and unusual and different for them, which made me curious about what people know about Indian food in America. And I realized pretty soon that what they knew was a very small, a little bit of Indian food, Punjabi food mostly, from restaurants, because that's what most Indian restaurants serve, or South Indian food. And I thought, there's this whole subcontinent out there which has this amazing cuisine. So the first chance I could, when I was able to work, I got my green card 2007 and started cooking. And I said, I'm going to start a catering company and cook. But in the meantime, I was by nature and training a journalist. And so I also wanted to write about food. So I combined the two, the chefing and the journalism, in what I do.
That's wonderful. That's very inspiring how you can combine your love for both and be successful in both of the fields. That's wonderful. What was your first inspiration for writing? Like you said that you started journalism, course in journalism. So at what age you think that you got interested into writing?
When I was a kid, I hated to write. I did not want to write. And when I studied in school in India, you know, you have to use fountain pen. So my fountain pen would leak all over the page. I was blotting it up and made a big mess. And when I was 9, we moved to Canada. And we were going to be there for 5 years because my father was doing his PhD. And we were going to have all these new experiences, which I didn't know yet, but my mother did. And my mother said, I want you to keep a journal. You need to write a page every day about the experiences that you have, whether it's going to eat some food that you've never eaten before, or it turned out it would be my going to the library or babysitting to earn some pocket money, or going to the ballet, or whatever it was. She said, you need to write this down. And so you'll have a memory of it when you go home. And she also said, you have to write to your family and friends back home. And I pouted and I said, no, I don't want to do this. This is horrible. But I had to. So I started writing a page a day. And pretty soon I found that writing sustained me. Writing became my friend. I could tell my journal things that I couldn't tell anybody else, not a friend, not a mother, not a father. And so I started loving to write. And I was always reading. So reading and writing go hand in hand. If you want to be a writer, you have to read a lot. And I was reading all the time. So that improved my writing. And by the time I was 10, I knew I wanted to write. And my mother sent a poem of mine into the local newspaper. And it was published when I was 11. And I thought, this is lovely to see your byline, your name in print. And I think that's when I knew I wanted to be a writer.
Oh, how great. Just like Kanak mentioned, she is a poet. I tried my hand at poetry when I was a little younger. We don't get time as we grow up, but poetry is wonderful way of expression, I think. And Kanak, I think she is giving you good tips how to become a good writer and author.
Do you write in English or in Marathi, Kanak?
I write in Hindi and English, both languages.
Okay. That's interesting. So poetry in Hindi as well?
Yeah, poetry in Hindi and English too. And I have written a novel that's in English.
That's in English. Okay.
Wonderful.
Very good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So Kaumudi ji, whenever I enter into kitchen and my mom is cooking food, because I'm living with my parents right now, so whenever she's cooking, there is this entire set of aromas that we have in Indian cooking because of spices and, you know, a lot of intricate cooking skills that we have. So I sometimes wonder whether cooking is an art or is it a science? And I would like to know your thoughts on it.
That's interesting. I think it's both. I think it's definitely an art. It's an art that's learned. So in India, a lot of girls and boys, I don't know what it's like today because I haven't lived there for a long time, but they learn from parents or grandparents or the people that they're surrounded by. So you learn by osmosis in a way, which is science. So you're walking into the kitchen, you smell something delicious and you take a bite, or your mother offers you a bite. And so you learn that way. You say, this is how cumin tastes, jeera. This is how mustard seed tastes, you know, modi. And therefore you learn to cook. But as you get older, you understand that certain spices work certain ways, certain ingredients go well with each other. And the organization I work at now, America's Test Kitchen, what they do is based a lot in science. And I chose to work there because I had realized as a cook, as a chef, that there was so much science involved in what I was doing. Whether it was how long to cook a sauce for, how long to boil your eggs, or how to mix batter for a cake, what is happening with baking soda, why does it do what it does, help a cake rise, and so on. So there's a lot of science involved as well. You may not know the terms or the words, but you're using science unconsciously when you cook.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. Do you like baking, or you're more passionate about savory cooking?
I like sweets for sure. I have a very sweet tooth, but cooking is more my thing than baking. Baking is very much more a science than cooking is, and cooking I can innovate. So, for instance, I like coriander and cumin, dhane jeera. So, if I want to put that into a bhaji that I'm making, I can put more coriander and cumin. Somebody else might put less, but I put more because I like it. I do the same with mustard seed. When I pop mustard seed, I love it. So I pop
Me
more
too.
mustard seed than somebody else might. In baking, you can't really do that. If it says half a teaspoon baking soda or baking powder, you do that. You don't fiddle with that. And so baking is more of a science. I prefer to cook.
So you can innovate more in cooking.
Right.
There is a lot of scope there. Yeah.
Mhm.
So what is your favorite? I would like to ask, what is your favorite cuisine all over India, apart from Maharashtrian cuisine? I know you are passionate about Maharashtrian food, but otherwise.
Okay, apart from Marathi food, I love Andhra food. I spent my college years there, so I love Andhra food. Um, I that's a tough question. I love the food from Kerala, the fish dishes and so on. I have a friend here who's Malayali and cooks a lot of those dishes for me. More than the food of a region, I would say the ingredients that I love are coconut and coconut milk, spices for sure, rice, anything to do with rice I love, whether it's rice flour or just whole grain rice, whether it's made into dosas or into ukdice modak. I like that. So I think I have more favorite ingredients than a favorite Indian cuisine.
So when you say coconut and coconut milk, Thai cuisine also, these ingredients are very integral to Thai cuisine as well, coconut milk.
That's right.
And
Yep.
I find it very similar to what Indian taste is. What is your take on Thai food being similar to what we have here?
On Thai food.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you asked this question because when I went to the States in 1996, if you'd asked me my five favorite kinds of cuisine, I would have said Indian, but I would also have said Italian, French, and some others, maybe Thai or Chinese. Today, if you ask me that question, I said I have five different cuisines that are my favorites. Indian, of course, Chinese, Korean, Thai, and Vietnamese. All of them are Asian. And the thing is, those are flavors that I love, but you asked about Thai food, and I find that the flavors of chilies, Thai chilies, as well as coconut in Thai food are something that but also ginger and, kaffir lime leaves, Amakrit lime leaves as they're called now. They just do something so special to a dish. There's that umami deliciousness to them that I love. And so I would say that's what I like. But the other thing is, I found there is a similarity between the Marathi coastal food that I cook and Thai food. So, for instance, when I tell somebody about a carrot salad, gazrachi koshimbir, I tell them here when I'm teaching that recipe, I say to them, it's very much like a Thai papaya salad. It tastes like that. And they say, ooh, okay. And so they know what to expect because we've got peanuts in it, we've got chilies in it, we've got lime juice in it. salt, sugar. So that blend of salty, sweet is very Thai. And so I see a lot of similarities between Thai food and Marathi food.
I just want to tell you quickly, I want to tell you an experience when I moved from India to US. My experience was there was only non-veg available options because my husband is a non-vegetarian. He loves to eat. So Thai food was something that I found it as a soul food for me because there were so many vegetarian options. The taste was very close to what we have in India because of coconut milk and lemongrass and ginger.
Right.
And to this day, I still love that food so much.
Yeah.
Talking about the history that you said that you studied the history of food in India, how has the palette or how has the landscape of food evolved over the past few years in India, like 100 years, if I say?
Oh gosh. I don't think we have time in 40 minutes to talk about that.
Yeah.
I believe in the last few years it's changed. My mother, who lives in Pune, was saying these days a lot of kids are saying to their parents, could you just order me some pizza, please? And so people are cooking less at home and eating more hamburgers, pizza, that kind of thing, which is fine. It's all good. But I believe that's the kind of change that's happening there as well. And when I was growing up, we would run to the kitchen when my grandmother was cooking and pull open a cupboard and have some kobreti bari, coconut burfi, or her guava toffee, or take some guava jam and put it on a slice of bread with butter and eat that. Those were treats for us. And she always had snacks that she had made in the kitchen that we could get. So I love that. And I think that that's part of what growing up in India was like in the 60s and 70s and so on. I'm sad to hear that that's changing. But as far as 100 years go, I mean, what I will say is what people associate with Indian cuisines, culinary traditions, is not actually Indian. So if you think about potatoes, tomatoes, and chilies, came to us from the New World. And when everybody says, oh, I want to make a potato curry, or I want to make I want to put tomatoes in my food. And I say, but that's not how we used to cook for thousands of years. That's 100 years new. The British and the Portuguese and the Spanish brought those ingredients to India. So I like to look back and see what was being used before that. So I'll use lime, I'll use tamarind, I'll use yogurt to make my food sour rather than resorting to tomatoes right away. And so on. But you can't say that any one thing is traditional because we have the Persians, we have Afghans. Our food is influenced by that cooking. All of Mughlai food, for instance, 1,000-odd years of that. We have Central Asian influences. We have Chinese influences. So there's a great book called Food and History, if anybody wants to look at that book. It's by a woman named Ray Tannehill. And she talks about where ingredients come from. And how basically food is part of our history, but how it's traveled to different parts of the world and how that's influenced the way people cook. And so Indian food history is very interesting because it's a story of migration and travel as well as colonialism.
Right. Absolutely. It would be an interesting read. I've been interested in. Of late, we have been talking about food a lot and what ingredients were actually from India and what are from outside of India. For my field work, for my organization that I work for, we do a lot of field work and we talk to farmers and. So this conversation very recently sparked up that chilies are not from India.
Right.
Red chilies and green chilies are not from India, and then something what we call samosa is not from India actually, that we brag about so much. And it's very interesting to know that what ingredients we actually worked with thousands of years ago, what is from India. And thank you for suggesting that book, and I would really like to read that. I'm coming back to your writing part. So would you be interested in diversifying your writing into something that is not food or, some other area?
Sorry?
Yeah, some other area of writing. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, I started as a hard news reporter. I worked at a newspaper in Bombay. So
Mhm.
my beat was architecture and urban development. So that's what I wrote about. And I also wrote about business and insurance. I wrote about health and parenting. So, and I enjoyed whatever I was researching and writing about. So basically, I think a journalist is for a woman, is a Jane of all trades. You have to quickly learn about any subject that you are assigned and write about it quickly. So I'm happy to write, and I have written about different kinds of subjects. What I never did, as much as I read fiction growing up, loved reading fiction, I never wrote fiction. So that is what I'm hoping to try now that I've done this other stuff. So I'm working on a novel right now. So kind of maybe I'll
Nice.
join you one day in having a novel published.
Very soon. I hope very soon, and best wishes to you for the novel.
Thank you.
Uh, I also want to speak a little bit more about Mediterranean food. I saw somewhere that you have a YouTube channel. I think you speak about Mediterranean food.
Do I?
I don't. I saw a video somewhere.
Okay.
What is your take on Mediterranean food?
The Mediterranean is such a vast region, it's hard to
Yes.
say. Living in California, we have a lot of Armenian friends, Lebanese friends, other Middle Eastern friends. So, Middle Eastern food specifically is something I love and enjoy making. In fact, one of my dear friend's mothers just passed away, but she was one of the first people that cooked for us here in California, and she's Armenian. She used to make these huge feasts for her family,
Yeah.
and we were often there. Everything made from scratch, lots of different herbs used, lots of meat dishes, but also lots of vegetarian dishes, bread called lavash. Um, and having had that food, I never wanted to go to an Armenian restaurant because I'd eaten the real deal at home. It's very different when you eat home cooking and you eat restaurant food. So I love Armenian food. We also have a friend who's Lebanese, who's older, who cooks. And when she cooks, she would just bring food over for my daughter, she was like a second grandmother to her, like a Lebanese grandma. And she would bring cookies, she would bring rice, she would bring pancakes over. So I love uh, what I've tasted of Lebanese food as well. Um, there are a lot of Mediterranean influences, Persian influences, especially in Indian cooking. And if you look at a map, you see how close northern India is to
Mhm.
Central Asia, the Mediterranean. It's all right there. So when travelers were coming east, naturally they were bringing the flavors they like rose and
Mhm.
pistachio and so on. They're bringing that into India, and it's become incorporated over the years. And we love using those flavors. So,
Mhm.
in that sense, I think about Mediterranean food, and I always look at things at how they impact Indian food. So, yes,
Right.
they impact Indian food, but they're also very delicious to eat. So, whether it's Greek or North African, it's
Mhm.
wonderful. Such a variety of flavors, and it's interesting to see what different regions like. So there's a love of yogurt all over the Mediterranean and in northern India and the rest of India. So that's those are the kind of connections I like to make.
Uh, do you think when I think about why these particular regions have some similarities in food and spices, I feel that the climate may be playing a lot of role in this palette that we have. Do you think it is possible that because when I speak about American continent, even Mexican food
Mm-hmm.
has a lot of similarities in the sense that spices and chilies and in that sense very similar to what we use in Indian cuisine. Uh, I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
There was somebody who wrote an article 20 years ago or so about how there were a lot of similarities between Mexican food and
Mhm.
Indian food.
Mhm.
And I agree that there are, like a love of cumin. But for Americans
Mhm.
who are not of Mexican origin, when they eat Mexican food and they talk about cumin, they think of it as a strong spice. When we
Right.
talk about cumin in India, we talk about it as a gentle spice. So
Right.
there's a difference between how we use that spice, the same
Mhm.
spice, but we use it very differently. So in Maharashtra, for instance, when you use cumin, you're using it maybe on a fast day or a ritual day when you're not using turmeric and mustard. And you're using it for women, especially who are fasting, because when they finally eat, they need something to give them energy and strength, and cumin has a lot of iron in it.
Right.
So, yes, there's similarities in the spices that are used, but the reason that they're used is very different. And
It's very different.
I find that in different regions of India, there's such there's such a connection between health and cooking that
Yeah.
you've learned to cook, I've learned to cook, but I didn't know why cumin was being used, or I had to explore that and understand that.
Yeah.
So we do these things just automatically, not knowing why they're done, but they're actually
Mhm.
done for a reason. And I think it's important to know what that reason is.
Uh, when did you start exploring this reason, the
I think
health reasons that we
in
have?
'96 when we moved to Texas and I had
Okay.
time. So I could taste Italian food and cook Italian food and cook French food and then cook Indian food. And I was often trying to reconstruct taste memories. So I was telling somebody recently, the food I make, even the Marathi food I make, is sort of an exaggerated version of what was cooked in Maharashtra because those
Mhm.
were the flavors I liked from it. So when I talk about, say, bhoprayachi bhaji, pumpkin sauteed, you're making it with mustard, turmeric, asafoetida as the seasoning. You're putting in the pumpkin, and then you're doing coriander and cumin towards the end of it, powdered coriander and cumin. Well, I like to put in more coriander and cumin
Mhm.
because I love those flavors. So I don't think my grandmothers and my aunts and my mother were putting in that much when they cooked it, but
Mhm.
I sort of exaggerated just so people understand that's the flavor. That's the flavor that I remember, and that's what I want to share. So
Okay.
that came out of doing this research on the history of food from all over the world. It
Mhm.
improved my understanding of Indian food.
So somebody like me who is an amateur at this and would like to learn more, what do you suggest and how to start this journey of learning about food?
So you already know how to cook, right?
I do, to some extent, yes.
Yeah. So when you're cooking, and I did this, I would say do it. If you have cookbooks, keep notes.
Mhm.
So say I have Craig Claiborne's New York Times cookbook, which was one of the first books I got when we moved to the States. Say I was making a pie out of that cookbook. I made it, I tasted it. I thought the crust wasn't quite right for this reason or that reason. I made a note in the margin. So the
Mhm.
next time I came back to the recipe, I saw that note. Oh, okay, I need to add a little bit extra salt, or I need to make sure that I mix the butter into the flour better so that I get a shorter crust. So I would just write notes to myself, and I would keep notes apart from the cookbook itself. I would keep notes on pieces of paper on my cookbook shelf to remind me of what I needed to think about the next time I was cooking. Same with magazines. Any magazine that I was using, a food magazine, make notes in it. So that is really important for you to learn. And then everything, whether it's writing or cooking, practice makes
Mhm.
perfect. So if you write more,
Exactly.
if you write every day, you'll get better at it. If you cook every day, you'll get better at it. I remember when I first got married, we were living in Bombay. It was 1992. A friend of my then husband's came over, and I had cooked some meat, and he deconstructed the meat dish that I'd made. He said, "Ooh, I can taste the cardamom. Did
Mhm.
you put cloves in here? I can taste the cloves." And I'd never thought about
Right.
deconstructing a recipe that way. But I learned from him that deconstructing a recipe helps you then reconstruct it. So you gave the example of Thai food.
Mhm.
First time I ate yellow curry at a Thai restaurant, I loved it. It had chicken, potatoes in it, and carrots. I wanted to make it at home. How do you make it at home? You need galangal, you
Mhm.
need makrut lime leaves, you need lemongrass. But
Mhm.
then what? So I reconstructed it from my taste memory. And then I was able to make it and said, aha, okay, that's what it is. So it takes deconstruction and reconstruction, as well as keeping lots of notes.
Thank you so much. I think that is a very integral part of learning how to deconstruct in any field. I think even in engineering, because I'm from
That's
engineering
right.
background. Yeah, so deconstructing and learning and reconstructing is a very integral part of any learning, I feel. Thank you so much for that. Um, I want to ask you. I know you have a soft corner or you have a passion for food from Pune.
Hmm.
But I want to ask you that how do you compare different palates within Maharashtra itself? Because food from Pune is a little bit different than what we have in Nagpur or Vidarbha, if we say, or Marathwada. You know,
Correct.
so how do we differentiate between those palates?
How do you differentiate between the palettes, or how do I look at them? That's a
Yeah,
different question.
that I'm sorry. I will reconstruct that question. What is your take on this variety of food that we have in Maharashtra?
I think it's wonderful. Listen, when I wrote my cookbook, this one, this book has 250 recipes in it, okay? And it's an introduction to Marathi food. I had
Mhm.
twice as many, and Penguin said to me, "We can't publish a book with 500 recipes." And
Right.
so I had to cut half of them out. But that was just a beginning. I'm only scratching the surface. There is so much variety just in Maharashtra. That's why makes me so angry when people say, "Oh, we love curry." No, there's so much more to Indian cooking and across the region. So literally when I am teaching a cooking class, I hold up a map and I show people how big India is. Maharashtra is the size of France. And if you
Mhm.
think of the variety of French cooking that people talk about, we have that and more in Maharashtra. So
Absolutely.
if you are from Vidarbha and you cook for me, I will love tasting your food. Um, I'm also lucky because my mother's family is from Nagpur. My father's family is from Pune. And so I got to eat Kokanee and Saraswat food.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got these two very different kinds of cooking, grew up with them, and loved them. And so I love my maternal grandmother's santosh, tomato coconut milk soup. And I love my paternal grandmother's purampuri. So
Mm.
there are strengths to every kind of cuisine, and I love those differences. And I love exploring those differences.
Wonderful, wonderful. Kaumudaji, when it comes to food, in India especially, we have a lot of influences, like you said, from different regions, and now more that we have influences from Chinese cuisine as well in India.
Yeah.
My question is how do I make sure that my daughter or new generation in India, how do we contribute to this particular area that they know about our food and they know about the reasons that we use certain spices or the health benefits behind those? What would be a good way to, you know, make that learning possible for everyone, I think?
Yeah, for everyone. Here's something my mother did when we were kids. I used to detest cooking. I did not like to cook. I sat there in the kitchen reading a book. And my brother loved to bake. So my mother baked with him. She baked meringues, she baked apple pie, she did this, she did that. And our family there, my mother's family and our family was always entertaining. So there were lots of parties. And so but she cooked everything for those parties. She wasn't buying or ordering anything. And so I was watching her. And the first thing I learned to do in the kitchen when I was 12 was
Mhm.
fry puris for her. So she stood me up in front of the stove. I was too short, so she put two big phone books down on the floor, and I stood on those and I fried puris while she was rolling them out. So, like I said before, practice makes perfect. So you have a daughter. So if you bring your daughter into the kitchen and have her do something she can do, and that is easy and safe enough for her to do, she will learn that way. And then talk about your food memories. So, when I was little, my mother used to make this for me, and I love that flavor. So I'll give you an example. When my daughter was 3 months old, I said to her, well, she couldn't respond, but I took her car seat and stuck her at the door of my kitchen. I need to cook. And so I told her
Mhm.
what I was doing. Here's some pork. I'm cutting it up into little pieces. Here's an onion. I'm mincing it. Now I'm adding it to the pan. I'm sauteing it. She obviously didn't understand any of that at that point, but she essentially started cooking then because I brought her into the kitchen. When she was 2 and 3, she would come in and she'd say, what can I cook? So say if I was making an Indian meal, I would have her make raita. So I would cut the tomatoes and onions and I'd have her stir the yogurt to make raita. So she got to feel part of it. She got to feel like she was making something for the family meal. And when she was a little bit older, the Food Network, there was a show on the Food Network called 30-Minute Meals that a woman named Rachel Ray hosted. So my daughter came into the kitchen one day and she said, let's do a cooking show. So I said, okay, let's do a cooking show. She said, you be Rachel Ray, I'll be Baby Ray. And I said, all right. And so we did that. So we'd make it a game. We'd make it fun. So I think making it fun for your daughter and talking to her. I'm all about talking. So talking to her about what you're feeling or what you like to eat or what your memories were will be a great way for her to learn as well.
And if not in the family, like people around us, if I'm going back to US. I've some American friends and they're all about curry again. And I want to talk about this more, that there are health benefits to what spices or what ingredients that we use. I would like to get some tips from you, like, how to go about this.
How to go about talking to them? Or
yes, talking to them, or just spreading awareness that there is more to food, Indian food, than just curry, and what are the health benefits of the ingredients that we have.
So there are a lot of healthy ingredients, not just spices, but other ingredients that we use that have a lot of healthful properties. Vegetables that we use, for instance, or like drumsticks, moringa. Yes. And recently that's become popular in health circles here too. So they're eating moringa powder because it's supposed to be good for you. And we eat drumstick bhaji, you eat that and you're getting it naturally. Or people talk about taking a turmeric pill, and I say to them, wouldn't it be better to eat it 3 times a day and you're getting the benefits of that organically rather than popping a pill. So, but I would say for your friends, have them over for a meal and cook food that they will never get in a restaurant. So you said you're Marathi, so make some Marathi food. What do you like to cook?
I normally cook, I like simple vegetables like shenga and all, which has its own taste and not the added taste of curries. So that is what I like to cook. And normal, what Marathi thali is chapati and roti and some kind of a rice. I love rice again.
Yeah.
Just like you said, different types of rice, purnita rice and veg pulao, and something that is more nutritious, like vegetable pulao has a lot of vegetables that we can put. So khichdi, I like to make 10 types of khichadis. Yeah. So something simple I like to cook.
Yeah. So cook what you like to make for your friends, but make sure it's not something they can get at a restaurant. And so when they eat it, they'll say, ooh, wow, this is Indian? And you say, yeah, it is. And then you talk about the spices that are in it and how you vary the spices. And then, do you use curry leaves at all?
Yes, sometimes.
Okay, hold up a branch of curry leaves. This is what I do. Hold up a branch of curry leaves and say, this is the only curry there is. Curry patta, that's it. Curry powder, tell them this as well. Nobody uses curry powder in India. Indians don't use curry powder. That's a British concoction. So we grind our own spices. So you've got garam masala, goda masala, in the South, you've got different kinds of sambar masalas and so on. We grind everything fresh and we grind it specifically, seasonally, and depending on what the ingredient is that we're going to cook with it. So you'd have something different for eggplant, you'd have something different for potatoes, and so on. So tell them, no curry powder. Take the curry powder and throw it out. It actually adds Indian flavor to your food. It's weird.
Yeah, it's really weird. Yeah. Absolutely.
And show them your spice box as well. And point to the spices in your spice box. Show them what you have. Everybody has different spices in their spice box, but turmeric, mustard, asafoetida. Have them smell the asafoetida. Tell them it's a garlic onion substitute. So say my father's people used it as that. But the other thing that's good about asafoetida is that it breaks proteins down. So for Indians, cook dal 2 or 3 times a day. If you cook your dal with asafoetida, then it cooks faster and it also helps you digest it better. So that kind of research you'll have to do. Look at my book.
Absolutely.
It's got all that information in there.
Absolutely. That's the next thing I'm going to do. And a very interesting conversation we have. I have a few more questions about history of food, but like you said, we don't have much time. But just a little bit on that. I want to know more about history of Maharashtrian food in particular, because our cuisine is a little bit different than what we have in South India or, even the neighboring states. So what particularly influenced the Marathi food?
I think it's what influences the food of any region. It's the ingredients and obviously the people living there. So say you live on you talked about Vidarbha versus Pune versus Kolhapur. If you live on the coast, for instance, on the Konkan coast, you've got coconut, you've got rice, you've got mango available to you, amsul, kokam available to you. In Vidarbha and so on, you've got peanuts. You've got a whole different climate. It's harsher weather in some places, but you have gul, you have jaggery, you have peanuts, and so that influences the food. And there's certain places where it's hotter, where people like to have hotter food. Some way it's cooling. So in Kolhapur, for instance, you'll find that the food is a lot hotter. And then it's also the community. So depending on the community you belong to, the food is varied. So there's so many differences that it would be hard to,
Right.
talk about them all.
Last question. This, I think, I have always wondered that a lot of people in Maharashtra, if I can say about Vidarbha, but a lot of people don't like the mixture of savory and sweet in one single dish. I personally feel that it adds a lot of. I'm sorry?
Marathi people don't like it, or other people don't like it?
Marathi people. People from Vidarbha, or even when I go to Mumbai, Pune, a lot of people have told me that we don't like sweet and savory mixed into one single dish. And like आपल्याकडे we have this amti, right? We have Ambad God amti. It's spicy and it has jaggery in it. I personally love it, but they have this take that savory and sweet do not go together. What is your take on this particular?
My take on it is yes, sweet and savory absolutely go together. I love putting jaggery in my amtis, or in pumpkin bhaji, for instance, to get that little bit of sweetness. I invariably do a mixture of sweet and salty. And the way I explain it to people who come to my cooking classes is, when you think about baking, say you're making cake or you're making chocolate chip cookies, do you put a bit of salt in there? Yes, even though it's a sweet dish. Why? Because the salt enhances the sweetness. In the same way, if you put sugar or gur into a bhaji or a lentil dish, an amti, you are enhancing the savoriness of it by adding a little bit of sweetness. So I think it's a very good thing to combine the two.
Absolutely. There are a lot of other cuisines, also European cuisines, where they use savory and sweet together. They have a lot of dishes that they make from fruits, but these are savory dishes. So that I find it very fascinating. I have not had many, but I find it very fascinating to mix the two textures and two palettes and create something more elevated, if I must say.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Back to Thai food, the Thai food again is a mixture of savory and sweet and tart. So it's all those 5 tastes together.
Absolutely. Kanak, if you have any questions for the author in Kaumudi ji, please go ahead.
Right now, I just wanted to ask that while writing, you get some ideas and you think that they won't work. So, how to be confident about jotting them down and writing them down? Because when a book is published, your ideas do not restrict to yourself, they are open to the world. So how to come out of this hesitation that should I write it or not? It would be
Uh,
appropriate or not?
whom are you writing for? Are you writing for yourself or for other people?
I enjoy writing, but I have my readers, like some readers who actually ask me that how did you write it and
Hmm.
was it fine? So I just wanted to ask that should I write on my own, like whatever I feel I should write it down, or
Mhm.
should I look for somebody's consent?
No, you shouldn't look for anybody's consent. You write it down because you're the author and you want to write it down. It doesn't have to be published, but you've written it down. And I'll tell you something I learned when I was, I don't know, how old are you right now? How old are you?
I'm 19.
19, exactly. So when I was a little bit younger than you, I was 17 or 16, something like that, I was reading a lot and writing and wanting to be a writer. And I read in a book by an author named John Brain, who's written a few, Brain, Braine, who's written a few novels and written this book on writing and so on. And he said, if you have an idea, make sure you write it down because by tomorrow you may have forgotten it. And if an idea is worth remembering, if you haven't written it down, you should remember it tomorrow if you think it's worthwhile. But if you want to make sure you remember it, write it down. What you do with it is up to you. But if you've written it down, then you can use it 5 years later. I found recently, we were unpacking some of my boxes, and I found something I'd written when I was 22 or 23. And it was amazing to read that and say, oh, I'd totally forgotten about it. And it's like, wow, this is so interesting. I might use it in the novel that I'm working on. So 25 years later, it's found a use, maybe more than 25 years later, it's found a use. So yeah, definitely write down your ideas and keep them in a journal so that you always have them in one place. And that's yours alone. Don't let anybody else look at it. When you want to write for publication, you type it out and share it with people.
Thank you, ma'am, for answering this question so appropriately.
Good luck.
So,
Thank you.
Kaumudi, I have a last question, just one question. So, how do we, if I want to taste the food prepared by you, how do I, where do I go? Where do I get it?
So a few years ago when I was doing cooking classes, people would ask me, can you recommend an Indian restaurant? I would say, no, there's no good Indian restaurants out here in LA. So come to my house, I'll cook for you. And I sort of said it half jokingly, but it gave me the idea to start these pop-ups that I did because that
Yeah.
allowed me to cook the food that I wanted the way I wanted it for people. So what I will say to you is if you come to California, let me know and I'll cook for you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That would be a pleasure. We also, so you mentioned Austin. There was
Mhm.
this Kokanee restaurant in Austin as well. Do you have any idea if you knew
I
about it?
left Austin in 1998, so if it
Oh,
showed up
before
after
that,
that,
yeah.
no, I don't know
Yeah.
it. Is it
It
good?
was wonderful. Yeah, it was good, but they closed down because of limited business somehow. People
That's too
could not
bad.
develop that. Austin is like a college town. It's a small town, so maybe they didn't get a good climate. But it was a wonderful restaurant, and I was very happy to, taste the food. It ran for 2-3 years, maybe
I see.
mostly. But yeah. So, how was your experience doing business in this area, particularly
Um,
how
oh,
was the response?
I didn't do that in Austin.
No, no, no. I don't
Yeah,
have
oh,
any
I
idea.
see. Okay. In California, no, I had a great response. I did a lot of catering. I did a lot of teaching. And I developed a regular clientele that I used to cook for. Some of them Indian, but mostly non-Indian. So the people who would come to my cooking classes either wanted to learn how to cook Indian food or were turning to vegetarian or vegan dining and wanted recipes that they could use for that. So Indian food is a great one for that, you know. I also made it a point in my classes to make sure I wasn't just teaching Marathi food. So I'd have recipes. I did one class called a meat feast. I did one class called lentil life. So we would make 7 or 8 dishes in every class, but I tried to make sure that they were from different parts of India, so they would get a taste of different parts of India as well. It was lovely. I loved doing it. The reason I stopped is because I got this job in Boston, and so I went there.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was fun.
You do enjoy your new job?
I love my new job. I'm editing cookbooks, but I'm definitely trying to get them to do an Indian cookbook because I think it's
That
long
would be
overdue.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would like to
Absolutely.
work on that.
Thank you, Kaumudi ji. I think we are running out of time now. Sorry, Kanak, I took little more time. But thank you for joining
No
us
issue,
today.
ma'am. No issue.
And it was great talking to you. I enjoyed thoroughly. And you are inspiring me to pursue cooking. Moving on.
Have good luck cooking and good luck writing. And it was lovely talking to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. And you have a good night, ma'am.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
At the end, I would like to thank Ms Kaumudi Marathe ma'am and Ms Anuja Deshpande ma'am for joining us today. We wish we get to hear you again and be enlightened today, just as today. And for my massive dear audience, I'm sure that after witnessing this conversation, you all are taking home an enriched version of yourself, just as I will. Thank you for joining us today. Until I see you again, this is Kanak Mahalle signing off. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to Rise On Group, a vision beyond.